From bringing back the iconic characters of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, to finally showing the comic-accurate red and blue Spidey suit for Tom Holland, Spider-Man No Way Home nailed it at the box office as probably the best MCU movie in history, certainly the one with the most hype around it. But fans overlooked huge, gaping plot holes because we were too distracted by the light show. I mean, the whole universe was at stake. And the movie finally introduced the multiverse in a way that hadn't been shown before. Obviously, we were all just a little starstruck by what this could mean for the future of the MCU. But tackling huge multiversal problems left out some minor but significant plot holes. The wider MCU is also pretty vested in this new direction, because No Way Home all but confirmed that things would only get worse. By the end of the movie, Peter's life has been turned upside down. He had to make the ultimate hero's sacrifice, and he lost all his family and his friends. But now, he might finally be worthy of being called our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He defeated all the biggest villains that have ever faced off against him, whether it was Tobey's version or Andrew's. But as some of the biggest multiversal events are approaching fast on the horizon, and with the web slinger left all alone by the end, the MCU needs to finally address how they kind of screwed up with No Way Home. So, if you remember Doctor Strange's spell properly, it went something like, everyone would forget that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, and that meant he would kind of cease to exist. But if the world forgot who Spider-Man is, then why would anyone care about Mysterio's entire story arc? The entire movie actually started with Jake Gyllenhaal flying on screen, pretending to be a multiversal warrior. I was so hyped to finally see Mysterio, and he looked like a proper comic book villain. He was trying to steal Tony Stark's fortune, and Peter was just in the way. But by the end, he died, but not before he could do some final damage to the poor high schooler. Like, seriously, that's a kid you're going against. No chill for Mysterio. But anyways, the final spell has been kind of boggling my mind. So all it did was erase Peter's existence entirely. He's just hidden in photos and videos, whether it's by a clever camera blur or by an actual bird camera. But think about it. If nobody remembers who Spider-Man is, then technically, Peter should be gone from the video Mysterio released too. Like, he literally would just be gone from it. So his identity is kind of safe, even though he isn't. The MCU didn't even stop to think about it. Or maybe they did, and thought people just wouldn't notice. They've gotten so busy connecting all these movies we saw, and that's probably why they would have found you much sooner. But now it's fine, since people are only hunting Spider-Man and not Peter. They still think he's a murderer, and by the end, he hadn't done anything to fix things either. So, in the next movie, he's probably going to be trying to clear his name, and possibly contacting his friends and family, as well as the Avengers. He's just going to be drowning in the chaos he's created. Even Doctor Strange was barely able to control it. But his biggest problem wasn't even close to being solved by the end of the movie. Imagine a whole 3 hours of movie, and the problem you set out to fix is not completely gone. He was last seen moving, like, the 2 items he still had in his name, and set them down in a tiny, dirty apartment. Then he went on to create a new suit for himself. New multiverse, new me. And honestly, it's the most beautiful Spidey suit I've seen in a while. The iconic red and blue just do something for me. Brings back fond childhood memories where I would read the actual comics in my free time. Then, he sat and listened to the police radio, so he would know where to go to battle crime. From fighting against Thanos and his armies to beating up measly punks in back alleys. It was kind of sad seeing our boy massacred like that. He deserved a happier ending. But it makes sense, since he's still seen as a murderer by the public. And J. Jonah Jameson is never, ever going to let this slide. So yeah, there's going to be a lot to cover in Spider-Man 4. especially since they decided to erase everything that Peter didn't need, apparently. He doesn't have a driver's license or even any identification card. All this begs one question. Is Peter Parker going to be homeless pretty soon? Because he doesn't have any legal documents that actually prove that he is who he says he is. So renting the apartment he got in the final scene of the movie seems kinda impossible. Unless he's living with some dirtbag landlord who doesn't care what the hell is going on with his tenants, as long as he gets his rent ASAP. But at the end of No Way Home, Peter was seen moving into a brand new, tiny apartment, quite similar to the small home that Peter 2 lived in Spider-Man 2. Peter wouldn't be able to find a place to live so quickly without a valid ID, and more, unless a slumlord rented the flat to him. Marvel has had to gradually fill in the gaps left by No Way Home's lack of explanation for the final spell's scope. But there are still many aspects of it that are illogical and can lead to further narrative holes, especially when viewed from a more rational perspective. But Spider-Man 4 should switch up the doom and gloom mood and bring some of the light and life back into Peter's life. And the first thing they have to do for that is to reverse Doctor Strange's damn spell. Although, if they do that, then the impact of No Way Home would be forever lost. Everything happens for a reason, and Spidey is just gonna have to go through it for a while. He has no evidence that he ever existed, and he can't even prove to his friends and MJ that he was besties with them at one point. And with the new post-credit sequence in No Way Home, it was clear that reversing the spell was going to be next to impossible. So he's been stuck like this for quite a while. On the other hand, you can also hope that the spell wasn't cast by a magician worse than Doctor Strange. But it's likely that the spell has a defect that can assist Peter later on in Spider-Man 4. At least, that's what I hope. No Way Home's script mentions MJ's expression as having a tiny flashback of deja vu on her face when she finally sees Peter. This could mean a lot of things. There may be a way to break the spell and ultimately give Peter his life back. Although the absence of Peter Parker's memory opens up a number of intriguing possibilities for Spider-Man stories in the future, like Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy. But it's also very unlikely that the spell will be around for much longer, though it has to be broken ASAP, for all our sakes. After the final spell in No Way Home, nobody will recognize Peter. This allows Peter to finally break free from mentor figures and take charge of everything by himself. This would allow Spider-Man to fully develop as a superhero and person, enabling him to carve out a unique route for himself in the ever-expanding MCU. Well, that's all for how the MCU should fix Spider-Man No Way Home's plot holes.